So to make a start, so what we're going to talk about today, protective behaviors, keeping our children safe. What do we mean by protective behaviors? What does it mean to keep our children safe? How will we keep them safe? And what are the tools? What are we looking at in terms of keeping them safe? So to start with, what do we mean by safety? And we can talk about this at the end of the course. What do we think safety means? What are we looking at when we say, so keeping them safe from what? So we're keeping them safe from abuse, from maltreatment, from being harmed. So we're talking a lot now in all communities, not just our community, about safeguarding children. How do we do that? How do we raise our children from the day we're born, from the day they're born, from the day we're born? How do we raise them that they feel safe? And what do we mean by safety? So sometimes we know in the Muslim community that when the things we want to give our children, we want to make sure they're educated well. We want to make sure that financially they're safe. And sometimes what we can neglect or couldn't neglect is that their safety in terms of raising their akhlaq, their character, and who they're going to be when they grow up. We look at their safety in terms of their emotional, their spiritual, their physical, and their social well-being. And sometimes we kind of understand those concepts in general, but as all of we know, I know, I've got 4 grown-up children of my own, and I know in terms of parenting those children, there's a very huge skill set and understanding, and a lot of psychological understanding that we may or may not have. And so this course is really to help you go through those early years of looking at how to protect our children and what that looks like. And so just, of course, talking about what is the role of a parent, what's the role of society, what's the role of Muslim communities. So today we're going to look at our role as parents and the roles of the primary caretaker. So primary caretaker, meaning usually mum, dad, and person who's within the family unit, living in the house together. And what's the role of those people in that family network and the safety of the children within that network. And so how do we raise our children? So how do we look at it from an Islamic point of view? So we know that there's so many interpretations of what our role is, and they're very clear to us. So we're told, for instance, and it's very clear, that we are the shepherds of our flock. So mum and dad and those around our children, we're the shepherds of our flock. So it's up to us then, if we have a flock, and I can say this having 4 children of my own, that who's in that flock. So we've got children, we've got boys and girls, we've got children with different personalities, with different weaknesses and different strengths. So mashallah, Allah gives us those children as a gift, and each one of those children is different in different ways. And so how do we address their needs, given that each child is different? So we don't expect one child to be the same as another. So how overall do we address their individual needs, but actually understand how we will address all their needs? So what we're going to talk about today is safeguarding them in terms of, and if anyone, and you can access this after the course, if anyone understands the concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where it looks like the needs of a child from the day they're born until, as we say in Islam, they're raised up till 21. So what we know Islamically, that there are 3 periods of a child's life in terms of our parenting responsibilities. So from 0 to 7, from 7 to 14, and to 14 to 21. And Approachable Parenting, the organization I work with, we give 3 separate parenting courses so parents understand the different needs and challenges of those 3 separate ages. So what we want to look at today is if we are the shepherds, if we are the protectors, what specific tools and skills do we need in order to make our children safe across all those emotional, psychological, social, physical networks within our family and outside of our family that they're going to come across. And inshallah, at the end, anything that I haven't covered and you'd like me to cover, I'll make some time for you to sort of talk to me about that, inshallah. So what is our job? Our job, we're told, so there are many hadith, we know within the Quran, subhanAllah, we're told that children are sent to us as a special gift. And we're told also in general, what is our duty as an individual, as a Muslim, whether it's a Muslim parent or friend or family member, we are asked to remove harm from the believers, remove harm from anyone who comes, within our network. And that includes Muslims and non-Muslims. So how do we remove harm? And that's a duty of care, isn't it? From us as a parent to our children, or all the caregivers, primary caregivers who are looking after our children. So we're all working from the same page, so to speak. We're all doing the similar things. For what reason? For why? So that our children have a network where they feel safe. And we're going to talk a lot about that, what that looks like and what are those tools. And so we're told in order to make another person, so this could be a child, this is an adult, in what way would we do that? What's the simplistic way of making another human being feel safe with us? So we are told in our Islamic tradition that our foundation is a foundation of mercy, compassion, kindness, relieving people from harm, from upset, from anxiety, from depression. So we know that part of our role, there's a foundation of how and what we should do with our children and with everyone. And so we're going to look at that, what that mercy, compassion, and kindness, and actually giving the tools to our children from the very beginning, looking at what tools and skills we have, and this is what this course is about, and then giving those tools and skills to our children so they can recognize what's going on within them internally. So first of all, if we start off looking that when, and as I mentioned, Maslow's, if you look at that hierarchy of needs, what are the needs of a child? So the needs of a child, as we know, are physical, social, psychological, educational, spiritual, and then after that, which those are the needs we often look at. And then we know in all of that, so in the physical needs, in the educational needs, in the financial needs of making sure that they eat well and they're dressed well, we want to look at what do the emotional and psychological needs that need to be met and how we meet them, because there is no completion of us as adults without all those needs met. And so one of the reasons today that I'm here, Approachable Parenting, bringing you this course, is that Approachable Parenting, through their parenting courses, working with people with expertise. So for instance, if I just say something a little bit about my background, that I've worked with a helpline for over 30 years and dealing with adult trauma of all kinds. So trauma that potentially they had in their childhood years, and then they've grown up into adults, and then they seek help. They seek help from counselors, therapists, maybe psychiatrists, psychologists, and helplines, and people who can help them deal with the trauma that they suffered in childhood. So, of course, our objective today is looking at how we empower the parents from the very beginning to help look at how we can address those emotional and psychological needs and other needs so that our children don't grow up with those traumas and have gone through different kinds of harm or abuse, where in fact we had a role to play in that. We could have prevented it had we known the signs, had we known what to do with our children. And we'll talk about a couple of case studies where things were going on in a child's life and we hadn't seen the signs of what was going on. A child would mention it and we didn't realize the impact or what it meant when they were telling us what they were telling us. And so we're going to look at how we are able to listen, to look at early warning signs, to look at the behaviors of our children that signal something is not right here, something is not going on, and how to recognize that. So you feel empowered to keep them safe and to keep them safeguarded, inshallah. So what we know, and a very general thing, and we teach this as a skill because we don't realize, all of us, in terms of from the very beginning, so the minute a child starts talking and starts understanding. So we're looking at some children at 2, as early as 2, some children by 3, especially 4. They're talking, they're telling us things, they're saying words, but they're saying things like, their tummy hurts, or, they have language which signals to us a response that we need to give them care. So how we do that, and this is what we train in our parenting courses, that every human being needs to be listened to and heard. And listening and hearing is a skill, and it's a skill that can be learnt, and it's a skill that if we don't know how to listen well, if we don't hear others, and when we talk about listening and hearing, that comes from putting ourselves as a parent in a calm space so that we can address what is being said to us and what we're hearing. And we're in a calm space that we can open our ears and our minds and our hearts to what we're hearing and what we're listening to, and how we can do that. So the number one thing when we look at protective behaviors is we can't protect, first of all, if we don't know the skill and the tools and the abilities, but we also can't protect if we don't have a relationship with our children where they feel they can be heard, where they can be listened to. And that means that we as parents, it's not easy when our children are telling us things that feel uncomfortable, that we may not want to hear. It's very important that we allow our children to be heard. And so opening up from a very young age, pathways so that a child from very early on thinks, this parent, when I'm talking, they're not interrupting me, they're not telling me what to do, how I should feel, how I should think. Actually, these people around me, my parents, my family, the people I trust, these people actually listen to me. They actually ask me, well, what do you think? What are you feeling? What are your thoughts? In other words, from the very beginning of our relationship with a child, and that starts, as I said, when they're very young, 2, 3, 4, having a relationship where emotional and psychological safety comes when we feel we're with someone and they will hear us without being judged. So a lot in our courses, we talk about roadblocks to communication. roadblocks to communication with anyone. So we talk about a roadblock to communication is when someone thinks we're judging them, criticizing them, preaching to them, which we do as Muslims sometimes, don't we? Preaching, guilt tripping, emotionally blackmailing them. So we know that these are roadblocks to communication, that were we to do any of these things, we would find that anyone, including our children, really actually wouldn't want to talk to us about what they're thinking and feeling, because those roadblocks will shut someone down from talking to you. So it's making that pathway, opening up a way from very early on a relationship where that child thinks, I can speak without being judged, criticized, told what I should do, what I shouldn't do. In other words, before we look at the options with our child of what they could and might do, what we're looking at is let me hear what's going on. Let me stay as a parent in a calm place and let that child speak and feel safe when they speak to me. And what often we know, what is actually fed back to us of people who come to our services, is that they say, I wasn't listened to when I was a child. I'm not listened to as an adult. People quickly tell me what I should do, what I should feel, what I should think. And actually people are not hearing me, not listening to me. And what we know is it doesn't matter whether we're Muslim or non-Muslim. Every human being not only wants to feel safe, but part of that safety is to be heard. Every human being wants to be heard. And there are some people, and these are the experts, the counselors, the therapists, the listeners, the good listeners, who we go to. We go to counselors, therapists, the listeners who are very good at listening. And what we want really is to give our parents the ability to be those great listeners, to have the skill set to be that amazing listener. So from the very beginning, you're the one that your child comes to. And so that child doesn't wait years to grow up and be an adult and go to someone who's good at listening. We want them to go to you. We want you to be able to keep them safe, inshallah. And we want you to know how to do that. So what is then, when we look at child protection, when we look at safeguarding, then what do we mean? How are we going to educate ourselves as parents, and how to recognize what's going on? So first of all, when we start in protective behaviors, when we look at safeguarding, making the child feel in a safe. So actually we as Muslims, when we talk about safety, we're also talking about safety is feeling in a place of peace. And so this is crucial, isn't it, to our Islamic understanding of the rights of a human being. We want to be in a peaceful place. And, so for instance, we want our children to pray, to fast, to do all the principles around Islam, to go on Hajj, to be spiritual, to learn the Quran, to recite the Quran. And what emotional and psychological state, and this is sometimes something we don't look at, in terms of our spiritual, what place of safety emotionally and psychologically would we need to be in to pray, to fast, to read Quran, to want to learn Quran, to want to be a Muslim? And we have a lot of our Muslim professionals talking about the emotional, psychological states of our children that often when they grow up, we sometimes find them moving away from Islam, in the sense that it doesn't feel like a safe, protected place. In other words, it can feel like a place where you're judged, criticized, guilt-tripped. And so this is not a place of safety. So we all have a religion which gives us rules. But the way that we carry out those rules, the foundation has to be as we know from the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, has to be from a foundation of mercy, kindness, gentleness, nice speech, soft tone. And so looking at how important that is in raising our children. So first of all, understanding feelings and emotions. And a lot of you, some of the course today may have some triggers for you in thinking, you know what, when I was a child, I didn't feel safe. And so what we're talking about today is, as parents, giving your children something that you may not have felt. And if today what we're talking about brings out triggers and thoughts with you, please do come back to us. Please do come back to Approachable Parenting, and we can look at that as well. So what we're doing is, whether you had this kind of parenting, inshallah, or not, looking at what you can give to your children. So how do we recognize negative emotions and how children can connect to emotions, all emotions, so positive emotions, negative emotions. So what we know from very early on with our children is how we respond to a child's emotions determines whether we open those feelings and emotions up so they feel safe and happy to share all emotions. So that's healthy emotions, so happiness, gratefulness, peace, all the happy emotions, or we open up the ability in them to say, mommy, daddy, whoever, I'm not feeling happy, or I'm feeling scared, or this makes me anxious, or this in other words, how do we open up a dialogue where they can talk about any emotions, any feelings, any emotions? So to do that, as I just mentioned, they have to be heard and listened to in a way which we suspend, so imagine we as parents put ourselves in a calm, peaceful, safe place ourselves, and we allow the child just to talk, and we don't decide or judge what they can say, what they should say, or criticize, oh, you shouldn't feel like that. In other words, not determine that's a bad feeling, a wrong feeling, rather, oh, okay, so you're feeling like this. Why are you feeling like that? So, we have a what, why, where, when, and how. So instead of shutting down a feeling, saying, oh, that's a bad thought, that's an unhealthy thought, and just actually in this recognizing that subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that we can, our thoughts and feelings, we can have healthy thoughts, unhealthy thoughts, we can have good thoughts, bad thoughts, and we are told that we are not judged. So we do not get a bad deed for a bad thought or a negative thought. We get these bad deeds for thoughts that go into actions. So we have a bad action, a negative action, a harmful action. That is what we're judged on. And so often parents, and having said that, we're also told, so be careful not to have too many inconsistent, unhealthy, bad thoughts, because they may lead to bad actions. So what that means is, it's very important with our children, if they are having bad thoughts, negative thoughts, harmful thoughts, since they're only thoughts and feelings, we want to get them to talk about them before they do become actions. And problematically, what we often do with our children is say, oh, don't say that, don't talk about that, don't feel that. And so what it doesn't allow is for them to talk about unhealthy things, harmful things, which are just in the thoughts and feelings process, and we shut them down. And then if they're shut down, those thoughts and feelings they have, when they've got nowhere safe to put them, they may then eventually go into harmful actions. And so we've got to be very careful about what feelings and emotions and shutting them down. So in other words, how we would do that is not to dismiss. So think about the things that we do as parents when we hear them talking about unhealthy thoughts and feelings. What are our responses? And think about this, what you do, what I would have done historically with my children when they're younger. So I hear a lot of parents dismiss. A child says, a young child, a teenage child, they say something, I'm thinking this and I'm feeling this, and we dismiss it. Oh, it's just a feeling, it's fine. We dismiss with language, dismiss. Can you see my hand? We dismiss with tone. Oh, leave that alone. And that's not good to talk about. These things are not good to talk about. And so we dismiss with our tone, we dismiss with our hand, we dismiss with our words. So dismissive behavior, or we scold them. So a child says, I'm thinking, I'm feeling, and we scold them. Sometimes we punish them. And so isn't that thinking about how unmerciful, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I don't punish feelings and thoughts. And yet we know a lot of parents punish either by, and I don't mean physically, I mean by tone, by words. We emotionally, psychologically punish them by shutting them down. And so they feel unheard and they think, if I talk to my parents about this, they will shut me down, they will punish me. And so I can't talk to, so there are things I can talk to my parents about, and there are things I can't talk to my parents about. And that becomes very problematic, especially when our teenagers, when they reach the teenage years, and we've had all of those years to have a relationship which is safe emotionally and psychologically, where children are heard and can talk about their feelings and discuss and look at options. And they come to those teenage years and they find themselves with parents that actually who've not been able to hear, who didn't have the tools to hear and to listen and not to dismiss. So not to underestimate, and I can say this, I've got 4 grown-up children, and in the years of raising those children, how amazing. So what do they say? There's a phrase, out of the mouths of babes. So in all those years, from 3 years to however old they are now, you hear subhanallah, because their hearts are pure. If we keep them safe, their hearts are so pure. They tell you things which have amazing wisdom and insight. And so when we are told in Islam that children are a gift to us. They're a gift to us in this life, and our children are a gift to us in the next life. And when we do this right, this safety, this listening, this hearing, some of the things you learn, I learn, all of us learn from our children, their wisdoms, when they're not shut down, when their feelings, emotions, ideas, knowledge is not shut down, is opened up, they tell us a lot more than we already know. They inform, they educate us, they give us knowledge about things that we may not know about. And sometimes, that happens when they're little, subhanallah. So this opening up of pathways of communication is essential in every human relationship. And so, of course, that includes when you're married, a husband and wife being in a relationship where both are safe, both are heard, hearing each other, both are sharing knowledge, receiving knowledge, sharing knowledge and receiving it within the family. And we're going to look at this as part of the protective behavior of our children, the family unit, inshallah. So how often do our children come to us and they say, Mummy, in teenage years, and they know they can come to us if they have a wound, so something physical is wrong with them, and we need to take them to the doctor, and we know that, so we can see it, so they fall down, they have bruising, they have a cut, it needs stitches, and our children come to us and they say, look, look, mummy. So when they're little, mummy makes it better, puts a plaster on it, soothes them. And then as they get older, when they start doing more dangerous things and are teenagers, and we address the physical. If something happens, then they've got a bruise, they've got a cut, we address that. And what we're talking about today is, in all those years from being very small to being a grown-up, how are we addressing the wounds that they have, which are emotional and psychological? And a lot of parents feel unskilled in that and feel that, they can't respond or address that because, well, when I was a child, no one addressed my emotional and physical needs and my emotional and psychological needs. And I'm not sure about how to do that. So today we're going to talk about that. But beyond this course, there is so much information. We have so many, mashallah, Muslim experts in this field that there is a lot of information for you to do this, not just on today's course. So looking at that, how do we then, the same as physical wounds, how do we get them to open up with what's going on with the inside of them emotionally and psychologically? And this goes back to the listening and the hearing. So having the ability and having the self-confidence as a parent to say, whatever's going on with my child, I'm going to be able to hear it. So I remember someone recently on training and on a helpline, and someone asked the question, why are there Muslim helplines? Why does someone ring a helpline, go to a therapist, go to a counselor? Why do they go to a stranger? And one of them said, in inverted commas, because the family can't handle it. And that's a very interesting idea. They're saying that the emotional and psychological upset, pain, hurt, and issues that our children and our adults have, whoever's in their family can't handle it, don't want to hear it, don't want to hear their emotional pain, don't want to hear their psychological pain. And so they shut it down and they feel, I don't have the skill set. And this is what the skill set is about today. Opening that skill set up early so you feel you do have the skill set, so that children don't have to wait till they grow up to go for counseling and therapy, that we've already helped them in those years in the formative years. So when we say protecting our children, what are we looking at? So sadly, we know in terms of safeguarding, keeping our children safe, we know statistically, and this is both for Muslim and non-Muslim communities, sadly, there is as much chance of our children, being harmed, and this is Muslim and non-Muslim communities, being harmed within the family and within the community. We have as much chance of being harmed emotionally, psychologically, physically, sexually, sadly. So we know that there's as much chance of us being harmed within a family unit, a close family unit, an extended family unit, and within a community. And so what our protective behavior is about is giving yourself and our children the ability to be able to know how to keep ourselves safe emotionally, psychologically, sexually, physically, spiritually. So we're talking about all of those and looking at the public sector, so how our children will feel safe in a public sector. And actually, and this is more uncomfortable, I know, for parents and community, to understand that we need to make our children feel safe and safeguarded within our private sector, to feel emotionally and psychological safe in my house, in your house, in the community. And how will we do that? And it goes back always to a child being heard and listened to. So I could give you hundreds of instances of parents, rather of adults who've come to our services and said, as a child, I tried to tell my parents about what was happening, And the reason that they didn't protect me is not because they didn't want to protect me. They didn't understand as a child what I was trying to tell them. They didn't recognize the signs of abuse and what I was trying to explain to them. They didn't understand it. So, for instance, we have a case study where there were two young boys who were going to their uncle's house every week, and their mum, of course it's an uncle, their mum was sending them to their uncle's house, and they were very young and they didn't have the right kind of language to explain to their mum that when you send us to our uncle's house, we're not safe. And what was happening is both of those boys were being sexually abused by an uncle. And because they didn't have the right language, and because no adult would want to, or even maybe able to have that headspace where they could believe that a member of the family would sexually abuse one of their children. And so the things that they were signposting to their mum, because they were very little, no, we don't want to go. And the mum was saying, oh, this is not right. This is your uncle. You have to go. And so they were forced to go. And sadly, because they didn't have the language when they were young to say, we are being sexually abused by our uncle, it took a long time for this to come out. And you can imagine the mum in that scenario saying to herself, why didn't I see the signs? Why didn't I listen to them? And blaming herself. And there's no blame on her. She didn't know what she didn't know. But this is the reason for this course that we're giving, so you will see the signs. You will be able to hear and understand what are the signs that something may be going on. If our children are young, if it doesn't matter, young, teenager, whatever age, that we can hear, listen to what's going on emotionally, psychologically, so that we can intervene. We can intervene, or we can look at other interventions, inshallah. So how do we protect them in general? What do we know from an Islamic point of view? We are given the tools as Muslim parents. It's all there. It's all there in our deen. It tells us what to do. So if we look at our Islamic principles, we talk about respecting each other, respecting our bodies, having boundaries, looking at what boundaries are. So I remember many years ago when I started this work, we used to give a course, and I've done this with my own children, on how to explain to a young child that there are areas of the body, so not just protecting their mind, so we'll talk about that in a minute, protecting their emotions and their feelings, protecting their bodies in terms of, my body's my own, and there are boundaries. There are boundaries in all relationships, even when we're married. Some of us have boundaries. Some of us love to be hugged. Some of us don't love to be hugged. There are always boundaries and respect for individuals. So when a child is very young, understanding and telling a young child, and this is about age appropriately, so not scaring a child, so understanding, and there's a lot of research, you can research it, age appropriately, telling a child through our Islamic knowledge that this is your body, and yes, your parents will protect you and it, but also we're going to teach you from a young age, and we can make it fun. We can do stories. I know there's lots of storybooks on protective behaviors for children, which are suitable for Muslims as well, on how do I protect my body. So the course I was talking about, and we used to give, is a child, boy and girl, knowing from a very early age that there are places on the body that no one can touch, and other than necessity. And that includes a parent, that includes that I, as a mother, that a father is not able to touch certain areas of the body. And we know Islamically what those are for a girl and what those are for a boy. And so who would touch those areas would be a need to touch. So in other words, if there's something medically, if there's a medical need to touch or look at those areas, we kind of, just like doctors, should set up that we don't touch or respond to those areas, aura, those areas where there should be someone else in the room. And so, or if it's a female or a male, and then a female wants to disclose to her mother, something going wrong here, that we should be able to say to them that unless there's something wrong going in those areas, they are your private areas. They belong to you, and no one has access to the areas, not even your parents, other than in a medical scenario, so a scenario where there's a reason for it. And actually, we may think that this is not important, but not having that conversation, and I can say this in the work that I've been doing for years, not having that conversation from very early on has opened up different levels of abuse. So if a child knows from the very beginning, oh, not even actually my mum and dad are able to go to those areas, they're mine. In other words, you give this child a sense of understanding, this is my body and I have the right to protect it, even if others are not. But we as parents are saying, we're the protectors of your body, but actually, as the years go on, you will be the main protector of that body. So what are we doing there emotionally and psychologically? We're saying that your right to protection is twofold. Your right to protect yourself from everyone else, and our right and your right over us is to protect you. So it's very clear. And at the end of the course, we can talk about this, that how we do this age appropriately, because what we're not talking about here is scaring young children about sexual abuse, scaring teenagers. This is not about scaring. This is about informing in a very gentle, kind, merciful way, appropriately, of how to deal with these issues. And we'll talk more about this towards the end. So, for instance, looking at, we know Islamically, how we have our sleeping arrangements. So who sleeps with who? So knowing that there should be different sleeping arrangements, separating, who sleeps in whose bed, who sleeps in whose bedroom, and understanding that this is really important, even from a young age, understanding someone's rights to have privacy. So we know with our children, we should make it clear from very early on that young children, as soon as they're able to understand this, and moving on through the teenagers, that you don't just walk into your parents' bedroom. You knock on the door and you wait to have permission to enter. And actually the same goes for parents, actually knocking on the child's door, asking them. So if we ask that respect for ourselves, telling our children, you have the same right of respect that your parent has. Everyone has rights. Everyone gives each other their rights. So I should knock on the door of our child and not just burst in and see what I might find or see what's going on. I should be knocking on the door and asking permission to enter, so that I can't ask for something if I'm not giving that right for someone else to have the same right. Showing our children, and this is really important, when they enter, for instance, they go to nursery, then they go to primary, and especially going into secondary school, going into the teenage years, of understanding what personal space is, that everyone has their personal space, and everyone has the right to say, this is my personal space. And in some of our training, we do an exercise where we walk towards each other and ask everyone to determine, so you could do this with your husband and wife and your children, what's my personal space? At what point walking towards each other would I want you to stop? So, your personal space might be, I'd like someone to come up to me and hug me. And someone else says, well, no, actually, I'm not a hugger. I prefer if we stop here, if we stop a yard away, 2 yards. So understanding everyone, there's no right or wrong in this. It's nice to be a hugger, It's nice to feel in that space, but actually, and you'll find this in the teenage years with your children, that they start telling you, hold on, mom, dad, personal space. So you may find for a period of time, they don't want you to be hugging them and kissing them. So it's a right. And it's, oh, come on, give me a hug, give me a kiss. And that's lovely. But still from early on, understanding I have a right to my personal space, and I have a right to decide what that personal space is. And so that starts very early, of showing respect for rights, respect for individuals. So each individual is different. So we, as I mentioned, I have 4 children of my own, raised the same, and yet they're all individually different. So when I was raising them, I learned early on, that although I'm the same, my parenting is the same for all of them. So if my foundation is good listening, caring, kindness, compassion, all of that, but then each individual child is different. Some are leaders, some have weaknesses, some have some have educational issues, some have physical issues. So not looking at children differently. And how often we compare our children. We compare our children with each other, and we compare our children with other people's children who we actually don't know that well. And often you get a very rosy picture of someone else's child, and you tell your child, oh, look at this child doing that. And actually often we don't know what that child is doing. We don't know the other side of that child. We might know the rosy picture. And so we should never compare. We're asked not to compare. And subhanAllah, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not compare us. He asks us to do the best that each one of us individually can do. And so what we know with our parenting is raising children with self-esteem, self-confidence, and doing that through listening and hearing, and not comparing, and making that child understand that I'm an individual, and so have rights. My character will be built up, and I'll have general characteristics of a Muslim, but I'll also have the characteristics and the personality of me. And so, what we say, we don't try and fit a child into a square box with a round peg. In other words, find out, know your child. So how will we know someone? Is by listening and hearing. I think at this stage, so we're kind of halfway through. So before I go any further, would any of you like, and I've not gone on the chat yet, forgive me, any of you like just very quickly and just unmute yourself, or maybe even raise your hands. Any questions so far that, just a few questions before I go into the next stage, inshallah. Any questions so far that you might want to ask me about what I've said in this first hour? And please do unmute and share with me. It'd be very helpful. Any sharing with the group of what's been said, or questions about what's been said so far? So I know it's been comprehensive for you, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Imelda. We haven't had any questions in the chat, but we have had a message about they've enjoyed the explanation that you've given so far. So alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So you're all very reticent there, so that's okay. So long as you're hearing me, so that means you're all good listeners, mashallah, and so you're hearing what's going on. So then moving on to protective behaviors and looking at secrets. So how sometimes in a child like way, when we're children, it's like, we've got secrets and we keep secrets, and actually we are told, aren't we, Islamically, not to reveal the faults of others, not to reveal negative things, not to reveal our faults, and not to reveal the faults of others. And I guess what is very important, and I'm sure you all know this, I'm just saying it anyway because you know it, is that when we talk about secrets, we're talking about something which is confidential, which is personal to someone else, and it's been shared. When it comes to our parenting and protective behaviors, we need from the get-go, as they say, from when a child is very young, is for them to know that you are safe. You need to, it's important that if anyone says to you, and this is how grooming happens, this is how harm happens to our children, when a young child by someone else who may be harming them or about to harm them says, we have a secret, there's and you can't tell mummy, you can't tell daddy, you can't tell anyone, and it's our secret. Now, if you tell a young child this, when they hear this, so imagine if the secret was, you can't tell daddy, but we've bought him something, we've bought him a present, and he doesn't know about it, and we're going to give him the present tomorrow. And so it's a secret, you have to keep it a secret. So that's lovely, isn't it? But what if someone, so a child understands secrets, and secrets can be magical, they can be fun, but they have to be safe. Now, what if someone says to a young child, and this is exactly what happens, something's going to happen and we need to keep it a secret. And if we don't keep it a secret, someone's going to get upset. You know, mommy and daddy's going to get upset if you tell the secret. Or if the abuse is from a parent, it's mommy will get upset, daddy will get upset if you reveal this secret. So what grooming is about, and lack of safeguarding, is when our children don't understand the difference between a safe secret and an unsafe secret. And we have to know and find ways of showing our children that there are difference between fun secrets and protecting people in a way that we're not backbiting, talking badly about people, and that there are other secrets that, in order that mommy and daddy keep that child safe, and that's including all ages, our teenagers, in order for you to feel safe, you need to be able to share with an adult. That's how you're right as a child to be safe, to be safeguarded. You will need to share things. You need to share secrets, emotions, feelings with an adult, so we can help you through those years into adulthood, where you are then able to keep yourself safe and yourself safeguarded. So it's very important to know the difference moving through those years of the childhood years. So for instance, what could it be? And you can, if you like, please do put some on the chat. So looking at what kind of secrets. So we know someone has been stealing, something. And so we know the behaviors which we can reveal, and so we can talk about them with our children, and it shouldn't be a sort of, and this is how, and I'll look at this more in detail. It shouldn't be, I'm going to sit down today and give you a lecture about sharing secrets, being safe, and all of that. No, what we do is, from the very beginning, if we are a family who sit together, talk together, listen to each other, all these kind of topics come up naturally. So how we want parents to safeguard their children is in a way that the topics, so we're hearing, listening, discussing, exchanging ideas. That's even when they're 3 years old. Oh, how did you feel when that happened? Mommy, my tummy feel, oh, your tummy, why does your tummy, what's going on? What happened? What happened? How are you feeling? Asking questions. So we know, and we'll talk about this again also a bit more, asking the questions that get someone to talk about their feelings and emotions. Now, this should happen the minute a child can communicate with you. And so all of these discussions, and we're going to talk about the internet in a little while, and recognizing that if you start talking about the internet with your child at the point when you're petrified, that they're going to be affected by the internet, we call that reactive. And so actually what we can do about the internet, and I try to do this a little bit myself, is talk about the internet years before the problems start. In other words, by the time your child is on the internet, so now, for instance, you've got a 3-year-old. So I remember, and my children all grown up, I remember when my youngest was a 3-year-old, she could use a computer when I hadn't got a clue. And so I asked her a lot about, what did you learn in school? What were you doing? What kind of things? We had a lot. So at 3 years old, we had discussion from 3, and now this child is a school teacher. And we had years of discussions about the internet. And so I didn't wait until I thought, my God, she's being groomed. She's looking at all these images. We had years of discussions, and I want to talk really, it's very important for you to have this tool and this skill, years of discussion about the internet, so that by the time they're on the internet, they're unsafe, they're seeing images. Conversations in your family about the internet have been normalized years before. And this is so important, that the time to talk about the internet is not, we've got teenagers on the internet, what can we do? And it's never too late. So don't get me wrong. If you're only having these conversations with your teenagers now, that's great as well. But if you've got young children, the time to talk about the internet is age appropriately in the years before the worries and concerns come. And so by the time they go on the internet, they've already got skills and tools how to keep themselves safe. And if they don't, you're a non-judgmental parent who says, look, anything you don't know, any way you don't know to keep yourself safe, come to me and we'll talk about it. And I'll listen to what you could do, what I can do, what your parents can do for you, what your teachers will keep you safe. But we want to know, how do you, and I ask my children this, when parents were talking about internet and safety, I didn't say to my children, do this, I'm going to do this and that. I asked them, tell me how you keep yourself safe. And actually they told me all kinds of things I didn't know. So what they told me, I knew. I don't know how to keep them safe on the internet. This was many years ago. I didn't know how to do that. We weren't able to shut down the access to the internet then. It was either, I think you had it or not. I didn't have that ability. But what you can do with your children early on is to say, you will have the tools to keep yourself safe. And this is what this program today is about. So looking at feelings, emotions, secrets, listening, open up conversations, having early conversations from very young through all their years until their adult years meaning at 21. So from 0 to 21, it means we've got 21 years of abilities, skills, tools to talk with our children and keep them safe at every period and level in their upbringing. So that's a long period of time to be able to do that. So moving on from that. So when we look at protective behaviors, we talk about in terms of what we're protecting from. So what we know is sometimes with parents, they have a tendency to wrap their children up in cotton wool. So this is not my phrase. This is a phrase that other people use, saying, oh, my husband, my wife, she was wrapped up in cotton wool. What do we mean by that? So in other words, there is also a way of overprotecting. Overprotecting is actually not giving a child of any age the ability to do some things, to have some behaviors which are safe, but actually we feel they're unsafe. So for instance, and maybe please share on the chat. So if we go to a fairground, and we go on the roller coaster, think about the emotions and the feelings going on those scary roller coasters. It releases endorphins, it releases we feel sometimes watching a scary movie, it's exhilarating to feel unsafe. And that's what we know within our teenage behaviors. There are some things they do which make them feel exhilarated when they're unsafe. So what we do as parents is to talk about the things which release the same chemicals. So for instance, dopamine, we could release the same chemicals internally in our brains when we're doing something that is fun and unsafe, and actually psychologically, emotionally, physically unsafe. And we need to teach our children what's the difference between those two, what's fun and safe, and actually what's emotionally, psychologically, physically, sexually unsafe. And there is a difference. And we know a lot of this as parents, what is safe and unsafe, but knowing it, and sometimes we think our children know it and they don't. And that's the duty of care we have. That's the protective behavior, safeguarding, that is our duty for our children, not to assume, particularly when they're teenagers and we think, you should know this. And the response will be, well, how would I know this? How would I know this if we never talked about this? How would I know this if I didn't feel I was able to talk to you about this? So it's our job to open up the talking and the communicating and the listening in order, so I know that they know, not I assume. And we do a lot of assuming, don't we, with each other, and in our marriages, with our children, we assume someone knows. Actually, how would we know someone knows? By talking about it, by being a good listener, by talking about it, by staying calm, not getting angry, not getting upset, and just discussing these things. So what we do with our children from young age and old age, we look at early warning signs. So what we call, it's EWS. So we say that every one of us, whether we're adult or children, we have a choice of in what we do. We have some control, and this is particularly teenagers as well. We have some control, and then there's a limit, there's a time limit in the choice and control of the things that we do. So do have a look at early warning signals and protective behaviors for teenagers. Do your research as well beyond this course. And in order for us to give that information to our children, that actually in terms of you being unsafe, you do have control when you feel unsafe. So it would be similar with younger children and older children. So imagine this, and please do share. When you feel unsafe, what do you feel? What are you actually feeling? And what's the physical response to you feeling unsafe? So what are the signs? And this is important. And what we're talking about today is you as parents, when your children are young or older, seeing the early warning signs. So remember the story I told you of the two children, two boys going to their uncle, and they didn't want to go. And the mum hadn't picked up the early warning signs. So what would be early warning signs? Anyone want to, say what's the feeling? So feeling sick in your stomach churning, feeling anxious. So those boys to the mum were anxious. No, we don't want to go. We don't want to go. And the response, so here when a child said, no, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, the response of that is, oh, what's going on? It's your uncle. Why don't you want to go? So hear my tone. Instead of saying, it's your uncle, of course you have to go. Hear the tone there? Of course you have to go. It's family. It's rude. It's disrespectful not to go. So those young children didn't then know, and I'm not saying that was the mother's response, because I don't know. What would our response be in that scenario? It could be like that. And if it were like that, do you see what happened there? It would be a normal response. Like, of course you have to go to your uncle. This is family. How rude, how disrespectful. And often we don't realize that when we have that response, what have we done? We've shut down their ability to share why they don't want to do something. So we shut down their ability to show us the early warning signs of why they don't want to do something, why they don't want to go somewhere, why they feel unsafe. So an early warning signal is anxiety, a child, being flushed in the face. So I'll just read some out. So the recognizable things, and you'll understand. So a child being flushed in the face, shaking, having nightmares, showing anxiety, showing a strong opposition to going to the place that you want them to go. So that includes places we consider safe. Mosques, going to someone's house so the idea, just because it's in what we think is a safe place. So say our children are going to someone's house to learn Quran, they're going to the mosque, they're going to friends, family. We cannot assume, subhanAllah, that they are safe. Our job as parents is to make sure they're safe. So of course, we're not being negative. We don't want to assume they're unsafe. So that's not what we're doing here. We're making sure we're telling ourselves, when I send my child out into the world, when my child is in my house, they will be safe in my house, and they will be safe outside of my house, and I've given them, myself and them, the tools to be safe. So so anxiety, sweating. So we know this in teenagers, sweating, feeling ill, trying to tell you that I don't want to go there, I don't want to do this, and making sure we don't assume. So if we assume, they don't want to go there, and here it comes, the not listening and the judging. I assume you don't want to go there because you're lazy, you're not a good family member, you're disobedient. Do you see how we could, if we're not careful, we can put judgments on a child's behavior when they're trying to tell us, Mom, Dad, I'm unsafe. I don't feel safe. And I don't feel safe when I go to that place. I don't feel safe in this place. And so there are warning signs for us to pick up. And inshallah, we'll have a handout. I think we're mentioning it here. Maybe we can have a handout of that, but certainly it's online as well. And you go online for Approachable Parenting and it will be shown there. So what we say, especially with older children, is this idea of giving a child the ability to stop, to feel, to think before they act. And that's any child from an age where they have the ability to recognize, I can, hold on, if I don't feel safe, any child of any age, when they can recognize, I don't feel safe now, and I want to talk to my mummy and daddy about this, or when they're teenagers, I don't feel safe, and those people I feel safe with, I want to go and talk to them. And that's why us hearing them, allowing them to speak and talk about their feelings and emotions is hugely important. So we can do this with them, you can do this with them, and stop. So when I'm feeling this way, just stop. Why am I feeling this way? What has made me feel this way? So what's happening to me? Why am I feeling anxious? Why am I feeling sick in my stomach? Why am I going to the toilet? Now I'm feeling sick and anxious. Why am I sweating? Why? It's because I feel unsafe. My body, subhanAllah, Allah has made our bodies in this way. Allah has made the early warning signs. So something goes on physiologically with us, our gut, and says, stop, hold on now, think about this. So giving our children the ability to stop, think about how I'm feeling, what could I do, who can I go to, and then the action. So what action when I've stopped, when I've thought about my feelings and emotions, and when I'm thinking it all through, and then what will be the action? What will the action be? To stay away from the unsafe place. The action would be go to my parents, say, look, this is how I'm feeling, or this is what happened to me. So stop, feel, think, and act. So just keep this with you. And you know, this is all online as well, the early warning signs. So in other words, when a child feels, I feel scared, I feel uncomfortable, I feel upset. So do you see how feelings matter? Because feelings are warning signs of something that's not right, particularly emotionally and psychologically. So what, you know, so what if I said to you, you know, I've got a cut, I washed it, and tomorrow I can, it looks, it's still open, it's still infected. As a parent, we'd address that immediately, wouldn't we? Oh, we need to clean that wound. We need to get you to the hospital. Oh, you know, blame myself now. I should have got you stitches, and I thought that wound would heal without stitches, and now I'm on it. And so this is the same thing emotionally and psychologically. I need to respond immediately to someone's feelings so I know what's exactly going on so I can address it. And sometimes we push so easily, we push people's feelings and emotions aside. And particularly when they're children, if we do that, we raise them up actually as adults to say feelings and emotions don't matter. And subhanAllah, the amount in our work, so in therapy, counseling, and the work with the, you know, Muslim helplines and addressing trauma, those adults, when they come with their trauma, are saying to us, our feelings and emotions didn't matter. So now we're talking about lack of empathy to that child. That child grows up without empathy. And actually now we have husbands and wives who are now in a position where they have a partner and they say, this partner, my wife, my husband, lacks empathy, lacks understanding, doesn't care about my emotions and feelings. I don't feel safe in this marriage. And so do you see, we're talking a lot now about historic trauma, about something being passed from one generation to another, of the understandings of how important these psychological feelings and emotions are, and the problems it causes for our children when they're actual children, and when those children grow up into adults and feelings and emotions are not recognized, not heard, and then we go on to having relationships. And we'll touch on, and this is, you know, kind of part of our case studies, in the sense that actually feelings and emotions not being addressed, adults growing up, marrying, and you've got two adults married to each other where the other's feelings or emotions are not important. So there's no empathy, there's no kindness, compassion. And what we know is that can lead then to toxic relationships. And what we know is what is not a safe environment for our children is an environment which we would call it a toxic environment in terms of their safety and safeguarding, is where two parents do not have the skills of, and we have marriage courses for this, they do not have the skills to address each other's needs. So maybe we address financial needs, maybe we address educational needs, but responding to each other's emotions and feelings, our psychological needs, in a healthy, safe way is part of the beauty and safety and the peace of marriage. And a lot of children are being raised in families where the toxic relationship of the two parents together, the lack of respect, the lack of boundaries, the lack of emotional, psychological responses to each other, is that in itself is an abuse of our children, who have to watch those behaviors and that unsafe environment. So in terms of protective behaviors, protecting our children from those environments. And so it's the same thing with the listening and being heard with our children. If we're in a relationship when either husband and wife are not listened to, not heard, your feelings, your emotions don't matter, this produces a toxic environment for our children. And they grow up with traumas, because not even that they were themselves physically abused, sexually abused, but in that relationship of those parents, they would be emotionally and psychologically abused because of what's going on between the two parents. So safeguarding our children, it has so many aspects and layers of it. So coming in the last half hour, we want to talk about, in terms of protecting someone, and this is, we're talking about our children today, but actually you thinking about this as an adult, what we try and do as a tool is give our children the ability that if they don't feel safe in any particular environment, part of their safety is to know that there's more than one or two people who are safe for them. And we need to, very early on in a child's life, where the we're saying it doesn't matter how young they are, we can ask this question in terms. So think about this in terms of your life, people and adults you care about, and your children. So we're going to look at one hand. On one hand, it's like Ghostbusters. If you've not seen the movie Ghostbusters, there's this thing, who would you call? So look at your hand. On this hand, if I'd want to know with my young children, and we can do it like a game if they're very little, on one hand, who would you call? Who would you speak to who's absolutely safe for you? So it has to be someone who's calm, who's wise, who's emotionally available, psychologically available to you, empathic, understanding, is not judgmental. We need to find 5 of those people on one hand. Who are they? Mother, father. In Charlotte, we definitely should have a mum and dad there, shouldn't we? So that would be lovely. That would be fantastic. But it's one hand and 5. Could it be a teacher? Could it be an auntie, an uncle? Could it be an imam? Who could it be? And it's for you to decide, not for us to tell you. But what's very important, and this is part of emotional and psychological safety for all of us. So if I know on one hand, I've got 5 people, and maybe not all the same skill set and level, but I've got 5 people that I could go to if I feel unsafe. Who would they be? And really this is very, very helpful with young children, older children, because if I say you've got 5 people who will protect you if you're worried. So say your parents, or if I tell my parents, so this is going on with my peer group. If I tell my parents, will go mad. Why did you get yourself in that situation? Why did you go on that website? Why are you talking to those people? So if I get those responses, I don't feel safe, because I want to be able to talk to them without them getting angry, judging, criticizing me. So very early on, I want to know that when I'm unsafe, when I don't feel protected, I need someone who will listen to me calmly, without anger, without judgment. This 5 is crucial and so important. Anyone want to comment on that? And inshallah, you all have your own 5, not just giving this is a gift to yourself and your children, knowing that I know who to go to when I feel unsafe. Any responses there? You're very quiet, all of you. Any responses to that? Do you have the 5 yourself? And do you have the ability to do that for your children? Anyone want to say anything about that?
I don't have any comments, Imelda, but can I just ask, would these people of the 5, how accessible would they need to be, especially for young children? So say if it was one of the people was an auntie or an uncle, would they need to be taught how to access that person, whether it's through phone, or maybe they don't see these people regularly? So how would they do that?
So what we do is, so say from a very young age, how we make our children feel safe, so whether that's physically, emotionally, psychologically, is we introduce into their life people that we know are absolutely safe for them. So I'm dealing with people right now, and we say, who's safe? And someone will say to me, my family's not very safe, but I have a very close friend, and her knowledge of Islam, mashallah, her character, her kindness, and my children know her, and actually, or him, there's an uncle, an auntie, a close friend, male, female, and I trust them absolutely. They're on this hand. And so my children, this friend is part of our lives, because this friend, her children pray with my children. And so I'm introducing at 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm introducing people of the hand. Now, when they're young, I'm bringing those safe people into that child's life. As they grow older, and particularly in their teen years, because then we realize our teenagers are deciding who's safe and not safe, and we might be the unsafe. Inshallah we're not. Inshallah we're one on the hand. What if we're not? We're still saying to our teenagers, well, if you can't talk to me, because this is what I would say to my own child, if you can't talk to me, who would you talk to? My intention before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your intention before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is for them to be safe. I wish that I'd be the first port of call. What if I'm not? I'm happy to say, if I'm not your first port of call, and our children say, I didn't want to worry you, I didn't want to upset you. So sometimes there's reasons why they don't come to us, and it's not because we're not good listeners. I didn't want to worry you, upset you, concern you, alarm you, make you anxious. And it's fine, that's fine. Who would you go to then? And that's why people go for counseling, go for therapy, come on helplines to talk to someone, independently, who's not going to be upset about what they're going through. So I just want to make sure they know who that is. If it's not me, if it's not you, who is it? But to leave them without this 5, without them knowing who that is, that's unsafe, isn't it? It's unsafe sexually, socially, psychologically, emotionally. It's unsafe. Is that enough for you, Shaz? You think that's an answer to that? Anyone want it to be clearer than that?
Yes, no, that makes absolute sense. Like you say, in terms of accessibility, it would be people who you are giving them access to, so they would be able to talk to those people as well. And when they come to the teenage years, they choose their own safe people, so they would have options in terms of contacting those people and get in touch with them. As well. Yeah.
And actually, in terms of this 5, if you're a parent who raises a child and says, you know what, I as a parent have trust in myself, have trust in you, and have trust in others, this would be a place of safety for a child. So I know that children and adults, especially adults, say, my parents told me, don't trust anyone. Don't trust anyone. You can't trust anyone, just trust the family. And you know how unsafe that makes you and a child when you're told, don't go to anyone outside the family. And we know we do this, and we have talks, and there are talks about this. You can listen to them from our imams, people who are working in the emotional and psychological services, is that within our communities, sadly, because we don't want to be judged, because we don't want people pointing fingers at us, because we don't want others to know what's going on in our home. And of course, people don't have the right to access to family matters. But when it comes to safety, emotional, psychological, sexual, physical, if we say to our children, never go for help anywhere else, I'm making them unsafe. So my intention before Allah is to make sure I keep my children safe, and I have the self-confidence in myself, in those around me who are trusted, to say to my children, I am happy because your safety is so important to me. I'm happy for you to go to someone else's trusted. And of course, I'd like to know who that is, and I'd like to know that they are actually trusted. But it's important that we show our children that others can be trusted other than us, because sometimes We don't have all those skills, and others do, so we have community leaders, our children might go to scouts, so there could be scout leaders, there could be youth leaders, there could be a range of people out there who are absolutely trusted and have these skills and have these protective behavior skills, even more than we do. And so we want to show our children that you're strong, we're strong, we can trust. Can't trust everyone, and this is the thing about cotton wool, and very important, a range of some cannot be trusted. Yes, this is the dunya, and this is also part of our parenting. This not cotton wool, stay in this family and you'll be safe. You may or may not, but when you go out into the world, and adults feed this back to us, that my parents kept me safe in my house. The minute I went into the world, I was unsafe. I didn't realize that I needed to be protected against the outside world. They were saying, don't worry, stay with us, stay within the family. And you know how this can happen, with women. Let's protect women, never let them out, never let them experience. And men as well. We do this with our men, is just trust the family. Don't go outside of the family. Assalamu alaikum. You've turned off. Thank you, the audio. We can, if we speak like this, don't trust anyone else but us, that's the way to make our children unsafe. So we have a duty of care, twofold, to make them safe inside our home, and a skill set if they go to university, if they go to work, if they get married, our boys and our girls, when they get married, to have a skill set where they know what safety looks like, that your safety is a right, your safety of your body is a right. So no abuse, we call it zulm, no abuse from anyone, not your parents, not your children, not your husband or your wife. Abuse, zulm, is not allowed. And so emotional and psychological safety is really important around that aspect Islamically of zulm, that we have the right to feel safe on all those levels, not just financially, educationally, spiritually, and actually understanding that, and a lot of parents don't understand this, that our spiritual safety, our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, often people are told your imam is low, and people are not praying or reading Quran. And often when we look deeper, and I know this through my work of over 30 years, is often when people are broken down emotionally and psychologically, that can break their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, sadly, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us this, He sent us a prophet, that when other human beings, especially those close to you, damage you, sadly, it also makes those people question, if I can't trust those people who are Muslim. So how we talk about the danger, stranger danger, Islamophobia, and danger from the others and the evildoers. And sadly, we don't look that actually a lot of danger, if we're not aware of what safety and safeguarding looks like, danger is from our own communities. And this is what we're finding. There's a lot of pain and hurt from within families, within communities, because of the way we deal with people's feelings, emotions, rights, respect, boundaries. We know there's an adab. So when we talk about boundaries and say, oh, what do you mean by boundaries, sister? I say adab. Adab are manners. How mannered. So when I speak to you, when I speak to my children, when we speak to anyone, lower my voice, my tone. My tone when I speak to you implies mercy, compassion, kindness. If my tone is like, if I've got a tough tone, and imagine, that thing, tough love, tough love is not having a horrible tone, a judging, critical tone. Tough love could sound like this. I'm sorry, this is tough love, but I'm going to have to take your computer away. I'm going to have to take your phone away. I'm going to have to do this. So being tough is not the same as being unmerciful, uncompassionate, unkind. And so that's where the safety lies. If we're merciful, compassionate, empathic, we're going to feel safe. If we don't have those things when we're being raised, we won't feel safe emotionally and psychologically. So now we're coming to the last 20 minutes, and I want to leave some space. And inshallah, please do ask questions, because your questions inform other parents as well. So just looking the takeaway from this session, what we want to take away. So we want to be very aware of what's going on in our children's life in all the ages, and to know what's going on, we have to ask. So a very quick, so when a journalist goes out for a story, and they need the full story, they need all the facts and understanding, we have this what, why, where, and when. And if we use that what, why, where, and when we ask our child, what's your story? What's going on? What's going on? Oh, why? Oh, how did that happen? So really, questions which are not intrusive, questions are about, with our children, about, I'm interested in you. I'm not interested in telling you what I think, I feel, I want, what you should do, what I want you to do. I'm really invested and interested in you. And subhanAllah, and as I said, I have, dealing with parents with grown-up children, the healthiest, the best relationships with parents and children are those parents who were invested in listening, really want to hear, what do you think? How would you do this? So, when we look at options with our teenagers, I'm interested, so you're out there with this peer group, you're out there, here's the internet, what would you do? What are you thinking? What have you tried? And it's the same in marriage, isn't it? Not someone telling you what they think, you do this, you do that, not authoritarianism. So authority, the authority we have as parents is to be a person who listens, who consults. So we know that sure, consultation is a very important part of how we deal with each other in relationships between the parents themselves and the children. You tell me your point of view, and then we'll come to a decision. No authoritarianism, you do what you're told, you do what I tell you. We are told, subhanAllah, in the Quran we're told, even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was told that had you been harsh with this Sahaba, they would have turned away from you. And this is what's happening with our children. If we are harsh in our tone, in our speech, in our behavior, if we don't listen, if we don't consult, they will turn away. And parents, in our parenting courses, we're dealing with this all the time. My children won't listen. Think about this question. How do I get my children to listen to me? And ask the question, I hope it's not judgmental or critical, is what was happening in the years we were, did you listen to them? So who taught them to be a good listener? How do we get taught to be a good listener? By our parents. If I'm a good listener, what am I training and teaching my child to be? A good listener. And so if it's our children never listen, of course in the teenage years, maybe they don't listen as well. But if you set them up with the skills to listen, the skill will come back sooner or later. So maybe they will go through those years and they don't listen so much. But say you're in the years they don't listen. So when the teenage years, I think, they don't listen so much. They have their own opinions, their own identity. So I will listen more. I will ask them, okay, what would you do? And this is what we do in protective behaviors, especially with teenagers. Ask them to stop. So let me go back. We're saying stop. You stop, not me stop you. You stop. Feel. See what's going on with you, not me saying, tell me what's going on. So I'm empowering them. Stop, feel, think about what's going on. And say, and we know with a lot of teenagers, some of the things, the places where they feel unsafe and the gut says, I shouldn't be doing this, and my mom and dad will go crazy. If we gave them the tools to say, if I had my mom on speed dial, And I could say to my friend, oh, you know what, my mum expects me home, we're going to my auntie's house, sorry, I can't do this unsafe behavior. In other words, give them the tools to get out of unsafe spaces that they're in. You know, there are tools, and if we give them up front, proactively, not reactively, the tools to get themselves out of an unsafe scenario. And often children go along with peers because they don't have the tools or the abilities or the five to know, how do I get myself out of this unsafe place or this unsafe behavior? So we need to do that proactively and not reactively. So we're saying to you, be aware of everything we've talked about today. You know, be alert to what all the issues that children go through. And you can research this everywhere. Safety, protective behaviors, how to keep our children safe at all ages, how to do it age appropriately so you don't feel you're using the wrong language. You don't want to use scary language and scare anyone, yourselves or them. Be very attentive what they're saying and the feelings, you know. So if they're anxious, if their tummy hurts, we know that parents say, oh, my children are having nightmares. What could be going on? Well, a nightmare is an early warning sign. Why is a young child having a nightmare? So what's going on? And you can engage the help of people who have expertise with children. So you don't have to always figure this out for yourself. You can call an expertise. I'm worried about my child. They're showing these signs. You can get an expert to help you with those early warning signs. So be affirming. So if we want our children to stay safe, their character will need to be strong. They will need to have self-confidence and self-esteem. So what we talk a lot about in our parenting programs is we often as parents criticize, and we know that, and sometimes, you know, we think that's helpful, criticize them and they'll stop doing the behavior. And I think what we, is from an Islamic point of view, we're told if there's one criticism, make sure there are 7 praises, 7 affirmations. So I notice one thing you're doing wrong, and so it you know, it doesn't feel good to be criticizing someone. You know, it makes them feel bad. It lowers their self-esteem. So we don't want, of course, we don't want to raise narcissists where we say everything is amazing about you. So we can remind, you know, we can criticize with adab in the right way, but we're told if you criticize, 7 positive things. So praising a child is very important. Praising them, showing them these are the good aspects of you, encouraging them. If we praise them 7 times, so every child, it doesn't matter what age, until they die, they want praise from their parents. They want to feel their parents recognize their good characteristics, encourage their good characteristics. So we want to raise our children up. And in this world, we were mu'min. We want our children in this world, when everything that's going on around us and them, we want them to be self-confident, have self-esteem, go out into the world with strength, with abilities, with faith in themselves, intellectually, psychologically, emotionally, physically. We want to have them to have all of that. And it starts from the day that they can talk to us and we can talk to them, inshallah. Be available. So what we know in any human relationship, and you know this, don't you, in your relationship with your spouses, to be available. So how should we be available to each other? Socially, psychologically, emotionally, physically. So we know what, you know, physically in the same space, and we know when we're in a marriage, we know that sexually as well. So being available in all of these areas. So what a lot of children mention and spouses mention is my parents are not emotionally and psychologically available. This is very problematic, and really I want to entrench this in the course, that unsafe practices and unsafe places happen in general, children to us, when people are not emotionally and psychologically available to us. Not just spiritually, not just, just putting money on the table, making sure they get the right education, making sure they have the right clothes and the house and all of that. These are all nice things to have. But there are so many in our communities who have that good education, money, a nice house, a nice car, and actually they're seeking help and support. They are anxious and they're depressed because of the lack of emotional and psychological availability, either within their marriage or within their parenting space or their family space. So this is crucial to the upbringing of our children, so that when they marry, they are emotionally and psychologically available to each other. And this is what we're talking about: historic trauma where it's passed from one generation to another, where my parents weren't available for each other and weren't emotionally and psychologically available to us. We never talked to them about any of this stuff. Sex education, peer pressure, danger from family, from strangers. We never talked about any of these things, and we become traumatized. So we're passing this on generationally, and that's why we're doing these kind of talks. We want to stop that. We want a generation to stop and have this right toolkit and these right understandings and knowledge to have that of what other generations didn't have before us. So no blame on the previous generations. Mercy and compassion to the previous generation who didn't have this skill set, who weren't able to go online and do a course like this. But we now are able to get this toolkit and this knowledge and this understanding of what are the needs of a child, inshallah. So again, being available, being accepting, no judging, no criticizing, no finger pointing, emotional blackmail. You know what we're talking about here, don't you? Emotional blackmail, making them feel bad about themselves. If you make anyone, child, adult, feel bad about themselves, they won't talk to you. They won't share, because you just make me feel bad about myself. So what's another way of not making them feel bad about themselves, but making them want to do better? We would say that's the Islamic model. Taking the things that you and I do wrong, we make mistakes. So how could I grow from a mistake? When you make someone feel bad about a mistake, you shut them down. That includes children and that includes adults. No shutting down, but opening up and raising up. No pushing down. So that's being accepting, being accountable of us as parents. So we say on the hand of 5, but the primary caretakers, which mostly are parents, this is the skill set we need first. There are others, inshallah, who have that skill set, but when we're given this beautiful gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you can see all the hadith and all the understanding of what an amazing gift children are. There are parents who can't have children, and so when you're given a gift, you want to keep that gift. So someone gave me something special. I'd like to keep this thing for years, forever. And I need to protect it. I need to take care of it. I want to be able to bring it out and see it's, I've done my best for it, subhanAllah. So protecting the gift, because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask, what did you do with the gift? And sadly, sometimes when we look at the behaviors in our communities and our parenting, it's almost like we don't expect to be asked about that gift that we were given. So being very mindful of that for our own souls and our own hearts, inshallah, in the day. So be accountable and be accessible. So we've got 7 minutes left. Please do share. So Amal, mashallah, very interesting, informative. Someone asked, her daughter is 18, but she's not opening up and she keeps everything to herself. So you see what we've been talking about, that, inshallah, years ago, if we'd done this course, we would have said from the age of, say, 3, be a very good listener. Children love to chat. Children love to talk about themselves. So all we need to be doing is a receptor. Let them talk, let them chat, ask them what, why, where, and when, what's going on, how do you feel? Now, it's never too late to do that. So if we have a teenager who closes down, we need to, with these skills, open up a way that they will talk to us. So what we know is, if someone was to do the parenting, the teenage parenting course, is we need to spend time. So here we go. We've said be available to them. So offer, and they may say no, offer to spend time with them doing things that they want to do. Not, oh, you're a girl, I'm a woman, would you like to come shopping with me? Saying, this weekend I'd love to spend time with you. Can we go here? So in other words, not probing their life, with what's going on with your friends, what's going on here, not probing, asking them, spend quality time. We call it spend quality time with you. What would that be? I'd love to go on a trip with you. I'd love to spend a day with you. I'd love to take you out for lunch. Any of these, you tell me what you would love to do, and then become a listener. Stop talking, and I'm going to stop talking soon. Stop talking and make it obvious to them that this what, why, where, and when, that all I'm interested in is you and what you're thinking, what you're saying. So looking at a new skill set, if you haven't already got that skill set, spending quality time, asking them how you can spend time with them, not inviting them to spend time with you, saying, I'd love to spend some time with you. What would you like? What would you like? What would you let me come into your space and do with you? And so formulating a new relationship in a different way. I hope that's helpful. So being quality time, listening, making sure that if in the past you were using these roadblocks to communication, so without realizing it, sometimes we are using roadblocks, criticizing, judging. It may be not them. They may hear you criticizing other teenagers, judging people. If they hear you are that person, they won't tell you about themselves. So I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just saying, be very aware who I am in that. And then if you think, well, I am very available, I'm always asking her, then maybe just finding a way, is there something going on in her life and she's shut down and you don't know what's going on? And here's the protective behaviors, isn't it? And maybe then you could talk to her and say, you know what, I've been on a protective behavior course, and it just reminds
me, that is not being kind. I don't care the
thing. So just being aware, maybe then in the talking, after the listening, maybe just saying to, you know what, I've been on a course today and I understand what, someone of your age, what you're going through. And I just wonder if I could share this with you, and I'm worried, you're very quiet these days. Are you okay? So use empathic language. Are you okay? Is everything okay? Is there anything you'd want to talk about? Is there anyone you would want to talk about too, about what's going on? I'm worried you're a bit quiet. The tone, the language, the caring, saying, if you can't talk to me, I understand. Is there anyone else? Do you have anyone in your life, who you can talk to? I notice you're quiet. Using this language, this caring, merciful, compassionate language. Is that helpful, sister, at all?
Yes, thank you very much.
And anyone else, and anyone has any reflections today, anyone says, oh, I've got something interesting and helpful to share, so not just what's coming from me. Any one of you would like to share anything or have any comments about today? You're a very quiet group. Shaz, would you like to share or ask anything today on behalf of any of the parents?
I think it's been a really good session, alhamdulillah. It's just making parents more aware of their own responsibilities and just bringing back the basics really of our trusts that we've been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the huge responsibility that we have. Obviously kids go through so much and they have so many things to deal with, and it's having that open relationship like you said, and making that time that time for communication, that time just to talk to them about whatever it is that they are worried about, and watching out for the signs. Sometimes we can get really busy in our own lives, especially if, you know, both parents are like working and they've got other kind of projects that are going on as well, you know, just to be a little bit dismissive. But it's those small little signs that you mentioned which are so important to be aware of, so that we don't actually miss out on what's going on in that child's life. And that, you know, one of the parents said, I hope that I'm one of the 5 on my teenager's hand. And it's so true. But if we build that relationship with them, then inshallah we will be the number one person on that 5, inshallah.
And this time thing, imagine that two parents, you know, especially in this modern age, as we say, two parents could be working, but and people say there's no time, but actually we know, and it's obvious, the biggest investment that you will ever make of your time is in your children. And I guess I can say that to you as a parent with 4 adult children, that there is not 1 minute, 1 hour, hours of my time that I have invested, and I can see now that investment. So I would say to you as a parent, if my investment in time and the hours and the days and of what I've given to my children, I could say that investment is in the millions of things that come back to me from that investment. So if I was putting it in pounds, shillings and pence, as they say, I'm getting millions back from my investment. And that's the thing, parents don't realize that until their children are grown up. Had I given this time, this investment to my wife, to my husband, to my children, this investment in the long term, when we're older, it comes back 100-fold, 1,000-fold to you. So we think, I don't have time, and we think I don't have time for them. But this investment is an investment for you. You're going to get, you know, all the, not, and from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, but in this world, your investment will be given back to you. And in the next life, well, inshallah, we'll have paradise. So all this time, I don't have time for the investment for paradise. This is the only time that we really should be giving the investment. You know, other things are wonderful to have, you know, the nice job, the nice home, the money and all of that, great. But this investment is the investment you can't put a pound sign on it. It's an amazing investment for this life and the next, and that's why we would do it. You know, that, you know, it shouldn't be a difficulty on us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I never do anything that's difficult. You know, this is doable. And why there's such huge reward? Because it's not easy. Am I saying any of this time, what we do, investing, is it easy? No. It's a lot of time and investment. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Inshallah. So inshallah, keep me in your du'as. There's more information on protective behaviors, early warning signs, a lot on the internet. Please, you know, do your research beyond what we're speaking about today. Come back to us at Approachable Parenting. Look at available courses as well, and any more information we have for any one of you. Come back to Approachable Parenting. Thank you so much. I'm going to leave the session today, and all of you, there will be, and Shaza said there'll be another session in Arabic. So there are other sessions of other trainers in Urdu, Arabic, and I'm doing the English. So there's Urdu and Arabic. Do look out for those, or go to the Approachable Parenting website, inshallah. Any questions before I go? Very quick. Anyone? Anything overriding before you go? Okay. So I think today was about protective behaviors and early warning signs. I think, you know, whoever, Noor and you are, this is a parenting issue, and maybe I don't have time right now because we're finishing the sessions. So there are individual parenting issues beyond what we're talking about today. So do please go back to Approachable Parenting. And I'm so sorry if I couldn't answer. So my daughter is 10, brother Omar loves her brother, 19. She says that he says everything is his property, and I don't know what he did with them. So, so I guess we're addressing the rights, that everyone has a right to their own property, their own, boundaries and respect and understanding, that everyone has rights. So I'm not sure exactly when you say I don't know what he did with them, what them is, but understanding by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gave us our agency, male, female. We were given our agency, our rights and responsibilities by him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so knowing that each one of us has rights, and teaching that, teaching respect, rights, boundaries, male, female, it doesn't matter. We all have that. So I'm not sure if that answers your question exactly, inshallah, partially at least. Inshallah, there'll be more from Approachable Parenting, we're hoping. And thank you all so much for coming on today. Those of you may have been in London and marching for Palestine, or those who were able to come on today. Inshallah, it was wonderful being with you. And I pray that everything that's been said today, and forgive any mistakes I've made in any of this, please put all of this into practice, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and please do feel to leave the session now, or 5 minutes after the session. Please do feel free to go. And Amal, thank you so much for giving us this space to be with you today, inshallah. And again, hopefully we'll be in the space again together in another session, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakumullah khair for this session. See you soon, inshallah.
Thank you, Amal. Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. And feel free to leave the session.